98% of the people who come in saying, I'll never do that, wind up doing it, which is pretty amazing. Some are resistant because they believe that they are without talent or skill. Perhaps they've had a negative art experience in elementary school, or maybe they were encouraged to engage in a sport over creative activities. Authoritative and environmental experiences shape our sense of self and our attitudes about art, about what art is, who can do it, and who cannot. When I was in college, my peers and I had a junior painting exhibit. My loving and supportive father was appalled by one of the students' exhibits. 3 shallow pans of water, tinted a color, one red, one blue, and one yellow, each with a wooden crutch lying in it. He said something to the effect of, I don't get it, this isn't art. And I'm trying to shush him, Dad, shh, don't embarrass me. Now, he also stated really loudly he felt sorry for the parents who had to pay for that kid's tuition. Now that was about 15 years ago, but my father will tell that story to anyone like it was yesterday. So anyway, don't say anything. I've challenged him with, hey Dad, what did I do in that show? He can't answer. Aside to say something generic like, oh, you had some paintings in there. Well, that was obvious. He can't recall, and the reason why is because what I created didn't strike a chord within him. The crutches in water, however, remain imprinted in his memory. While that student's installation did not fit my father's definition for quote-unquote art, that student artist had created an image that provoked and raised questions of its meaning and its purpose. And sometimes that's what art is. It's not an answer, but a question. Not an end product, but a concrete map of a process, an emotional, physical, and spiritual process. Now, my art has evolved over the years, from searching for an answer to conquering a challenge, to seeking approval, to reflecting what is from my internal point of view. And while often moved by the beauty and curiosities of the outside world, my professional life and deep interest in the psyche draws me inward visually to explore dreams, emotion, thought, perception, and spirit. I tend to explore these images and sensations through my own art making after a session with a client in my makeshift studio. But sometimes the images are automatic and can be valuable within the therapy session itself. I once sat across from a middle-aged client whom I had seen a couple of times. I consistently felt an obstacle between us despite his verbal articulation and compliance in answering the questions that I had. In my mind, I pictured him sitting in a glass box. I shared this image with him in a reflective moment of our session, to which he reported, funny you should say that. I'm a glass worker, and I often feel as if I'm surrounded in glass when in social settings. I can see out, others can see in, but I don't want them to get too close. They cannot find out how unsure and anxious I really am. This reflection and feedback aided the therapy process in helping that client talk about his social anxiety and poor self-esteem, a topic he had not identified or addressed until that point. So as I mentioned earlier, most of my images, especially the ones that are hanging here this evening, are an image exploration that is post-session. Sometimes it's a really quick release, like a scribble. Sometimes it's more of an elaborate process created over time to help me better understand my internal notions and reactions to what I am hearing, seeing, and feeling about my clients and their stories. Reflecting and journaling post-session is a valuable tool that most professionals will utilize. Using art to do this, however, I believe goes even further, to bypass words, to engage in a process without linear rules, to sidestep intellectual defenses, and to let it all come out safely, no matter how questionable or bizarre. Its message is honest. In 1920, surrealist artist Paul Klee wrote, "Formerly we used to represent things visible on earth we either liked to look at or would have liked to see. Today, we reveal the reality that is behind visible things, thus expressing the belief that the visible world is merely an isolated case in relation to the universe, and that there are many more other latent realities." Klee was very interested in primitive art, dreams, and myth, and he often used metaphors and symbols to make visible his belief as presented in that quote. Like Clay and pioneers of art therapy such as Margaret Naumburg, I believe that art expressions can provide a road into the unconscious and present a point of view about life and its experiences in a fashion that oftentimes can be more clear and real than life itself. I've been drawn to this quote ever since reading it back in 1998 when I had a chance to visit the San Francisco Museum of Modern Art. And in addition to finding validation for myself as an artist, I believe that it encourages all individuals to be open to the process of creating to better understand the world we live in. In the light of individual trials and tribulations, we live in a world of global concerns. War, natural disasters such as the recent devastating earthquake in Haiti, and religious persecution, just to name a few. If our artistic creations can help us gain new insight and encourage empathy, could it not also help us find new coping skills to solve problems to previously unanswered questions and offer a foundation to humankind's abilities towards creativity and productivity rather than destructive impulses? So in summary, and you're thinking, thank God, be not afraid. Making art isn't just for artists. It's not just for art therapists. It's not just for people who come into a therapy session and they're forced by their art therapist to draw. Actually, we don't really force them. But it's for everybody. And art has the potential to be reflective, meaningful, and healing and life-enhancing for all. Thank you. So questions and answers, if there are any. Multitasking.
It was a question.
Yeah, there it was. It was a question and an answer. I hope that solved your problem. Don't stand against there. There's an art project right above you. Any questions and answers from the audience? Anything, really.
Are we going to get a tour of what's around or a little discussion?
Well, I think we'll do that informally. You know, for people who, I know some people have to go to class and they have to leave, and that's fine if you need to do that, but if there are people who wanted to mill around and have something to eat, I mean, I think Michelle and I would be more than happy to, you know, answer questions about specific pieces, definitely.
Yeah, the only thing that I would dovetail onto what you had said is just thinking about sort of life as a creative process, and that the spirit or that energy that moves us is not only alive in creative art making, but it's also alive or passionate in the life that we lead. And for many people that you know, we find in our offices, I think sort of that spirit or life or essence has gone astray, and it also often has to be combated against sort of cultural norms which don't necessarily put that as a value. So people end up feeling empty or dead or lifeless, and that sort of the art is a bridge or a doorway back into finding that passion and finding a way to reconstruct the creative essence, not only in the art making, but also in life itself.
Well said.
Very well said. Anybody have questions? I mean, you could ask questions about a specific piece if you'd like to share with the group. That would be fine. Anybody have questions about a specific piece they would like?
Yes, our children are here to answer questions too.
And nobody?
Do you have a question?
Okay, thank you very, very much. That was wonderful.
Yeah, thank you, everybody.